Well, welcome everyone to Thursday Night Live. My name's Jared Brown, and we're here again at Bow River Brewing. And should be a good night. We're going to tie a couple of terrestrial patterns, foam ant and a grasshopper pattern, AJ's hopper. Don't remember the name of the ant, but just another Oswalds foam ant. Okay. We're going to start with the small ant pattern. So we got about a size 12 hook. We're going to use a black thread. If you don't have black thread, not a big deal, but we're going to start it off by just getting a thread base on there. So just to let you know, Bow River Brewing now has home delivery for the food via Skip the Dishes or Foodora. And they got great pizza, so definitely give them a try. Now, has everyone got started here? Also, if anyone's interested in very nice boat boxes, double-sided, you can get a lot of flies in this sucker. Talk to Troy with West River Fly Shop. How's everyone doing? You got your thread started? So we're going to start by, we're going to cut a little bit of a taper in the black foam, just to make it easier to tie it in at the back. See, I got a little bit of a taper there. Well, we're just going to do the one end of the foam for now, because we're going to fold it back and forth before we do our cutting. Just this end is fine for now. I'm going to start off with the foam. The foam wants to roll on the hook. As you're tightening it, it wants to roll. So I have the foam facing me a little bit, so as I'm tightening it, it rolls and gets a little more horizontal. Bring the thread forward. After you've got it anchored, we're going to get a nice little fold there. Now this is going to be a little tricky. We've got to tie in all this thick foam, and we got to make enough room to put in our post and our hackle. Right? Still leaving a nice big butt on there for it to be buoyant. So. Yeah, I folded it forward and then tied it in again.
What did you call that? A nice big butt?
Yeah, a nice big buoyant butt on this ant. That's what we'll do.
I like big butts.
So I'm going to tie the thread and the foam in with enough room that I can still get this front section folded and tied in as well. All right, see. I don't want to tie it too close to the eye of the hook. I need to leave myself a gap here because we're going to have some room to finish off your, do your whip finish and everything. So I folded it back at the head. See there? Still leaves myself, like I said, enough room to tie the thread in afterwards. Now we're just going to trim off this foam and get rid of it. I'm going to tie this in just a little bit more because the front's a little bit big.
you just trim it flush and then follow it back over?
Yeah, I just cut it flush and tied it in. Just get it all laying down nice. Next, we're going to take your hackle and we're going to strip off some of the fibers, so you're left with a much more solid base to tie it in with. Okay. Now your foam piece is next. I better slow down. Yeah, well, you're going to attach the whole hackle. You're not cutting any of this hackle off until after we're done with it. We're getting prepared for the next step. Yeah, you tie it in right on the top.
Tied it in from the tip.
The butt end of the feather. Yeah, it's stronger that way and makes it nicer to work with.
Right to the middle or something, I guess.
Now, if you're having a hard time getting this foam to stay in place, you can use crazy glue, but remember with crazy glues, it tends to turn white and crusty and can make a mess. So the tiniest little amount will be sufficient. So if everyone's got their hackle on, the yellow foam that comes in the kit is quite long. We don't need that much. So I'm actually going to cut that in half lengthwise. That's enough to do 2 flies quite easily. Just a tiny little piece. Now right smack in the middle, I'm going to tie this in. I got a loose thread wrap to get it started. I'm going to cinch it down with 3 or 4 wraps, make sure it's nice and stable. Now I'm going to bring my thread under the foam over to the eye of the hook. So I've brought my thread in various stages all the way up to the front. Underneath the black foam. Underneath the black foam at the head, right by the eye of the hook. That's where I'm going to leave the thread. We're all good? Now, typically with a post, we're doing a horizontal wrap, right? Well, with this foam being our post, we're going to do kind of a weird little wrap. So we're going to go on about a 45-degree angle, then come up, and then go back down. And we're going around the base of the foam, but we're going to wedge it in there as we do it. All right? Now, you should only need to do it about 3 or 4 times around. Once you're satisfied with how much hackle is sticking out, you're actually going to bring that hackle underneath the foam right to where your thread is. It'll be much easier and a lot stronger to tie in your hackle on the shank of the hook than in the foam. Okay? Now again, if you don't want to actually cut the hackle itself, you can just give it a quick yank back and it'll break it off flush. Now that's a good test to see if you've anchored in your hackle properly. If you didn't anchor it in properly, this whole fly is just going to go poof. So we're pretty much done. I'm just going to trim off just a little bit of this extra fiber that's here. Now the whip finish. Now if you're using a tool, you could have a hard time dealing with the foam. Another reason why we leave it back a little bit so you can fold it back and get in there. And that is it. So feel free to use different colors for your foam. bright pink, whatever, chartreuse, whatever's going to be easier for you to keep track of. And what we're going to do is I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to apply the head cement to the bottom because we got a lot of exposed thread along the bottom. So what the fish are seeing is from underneath, you don't really see that yellow foam. So that's why you can change that foam to whatever color you want. I see some looks of disappointment, like something went wrong. How's everyone doing? You're all good? With a little practice, these go really quick, and they're a very handy fly in the mountains, hence Mountain March. That was a good time for me to have some beer.
Where's that beer from?
We are down here at, in case you're just tuning in, we're down here at Bow River Brewing. I'd like to thank flyfishingbowriver.com for hosting this and giving me another chance up at the Vice. Not sure if it's another chance or just default, but whatever. Yeah, a chance on the Vice is good enough for me. Your hackle less?
Well, I thought it was bumped up here, so I picked it up.
And you pulled it out.
Yeah, so I pulled it out.
You know, you can still throw thread in there and put a hackle on. You can still fix it. Yeah. Yeah. We did a larger size for tonight for showing you the techniques. But by all means, definitely tie these in smaller sizes. Down to size 18 if you want. Now, the whole folding the foam technique in a size 18 is going to be a little tricky. But the basics are still there. Now, if everyone's done,
Oh, you did it.
Every year, the Calgary Stampede brings over 1 million people to our city in July. And we're happy to share. That's a pretty awesome time to be fishing the Bow River, which flows right through the heart of Calgary. So, let's spend some time together on the water, your business and our guides. Book 3 or more boats and save $50 per boat. Give us a shout. And let's customize a Stampede float for your company.
So the other nice thing about these kits is in each kit, you're getting not only the materials to make the fly, but you also get a finished fly as well. So in case something messes up, like a hackle breaks, don't worry about it. You have one in the kit that's good to go. So a couple things with this next fly. You guys can finish up tying your ants if you need to. The one that's in your kit was tied with the foam vertical. Now, that's one way of doing it. By all means, we could do that. Standard, like traditional way is having the foam horizontal. The other thing that's interesting is since it's white foam, you just need to bring with you a couple of different colors of markers, Copic markers, Sharpies, whatever. You get into a situation where it's a very unique colored grasshopper, you just whip out the right marker and you just color it up yourself. So it's a nice little shortcut. So if everyone's ready, we're going to start with our hopper. Now we're going to tie this one horizontally. We're going to have the foam horizontal instead. Well, the vertical, yeah, it looks nice from the side, but we don't know 100% how it's going to float. It'll float, but it might float horizontal on the water. Yeah, you can change to the tan thread if you want, or you can still use the black thread. It'll just be a stronger contrast in the white foam. So with this next fly, we're actually going to do something a little different than last week. It's somewhat of an extended body. So what I'm doing is I've taken the white foam and I folded it in half. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hold this in my hand and I'm going to do my very first segment freestyle. Just freehanding it.
Folded end.
So I'm working with the folded end, right? And I'm doing my very first segment with just holding on to it. And I'm going to do a whip finish on this. Now, that's the tricky part of this fly, but other than that, it's a pretty simple fly.
Well, somebody has to be around to access what
Okay.
Did you put a half hitch over that?
Yes, I did. I did a whip finish, but you could basically do a couple of half hitches, anything to just kind of get that locked into place. Now I'm going to get my thread base started on the hook. Yeah, I just completely cut it off. I did a whip finish and cut it off, yeah. What was that? Yeah, that would be a Hopper's Juicy Bomb. I knew as soon as I said that I was going to regret that. So I brought the thread to the base of the hook. Somewhere close to where if the thread is hanging down, it's going to line up with the barb. Right? That's basically a traditional whip place to start the fly. Now we're going to do a couple segments, and I'm going to try to match this first segment that we tied in. So again, I'm going to do this with the foam facing me a little bit first, so that as I tighten it, it'll kind of roll. Okay. So once I have that tied in, looks like I've got some people who need to catch up a bit.
So you just tied in the foam on top.
Laying it on top,
Laying it
yeah.
on top, closer towards you.
Trying to keep the first segment the same as the next. Trying to somewhat space it out nicely. Yeah, just I don't think the trout are gonna go up to it with a tape measure or a measuring device and be like, no, those segments are way off. I'm not gonna eat that. So then I'm gonna bring the foam back. Move the thread forward on the hook to where my next segment is going to be. Now, if you're having a hard time with this moving around, now's a good time to put the crazy glue on, which you guys have all my crazy glue. No worries. Just the tiniest little bit right there. How's everyone doing? Okay, so this next segment, I repeated the steps, and I've moved it forward again. This is where we're going to start tying in the darker colored foam, the legs. So you should all have 4 segments. I'm a little off on my spacing, but whatever. So I'm going to take this dark foam, and again, I'm going to cut a taper in the end. You can have it come to a point if you want, or it's a little bit long. It's a little off, but it'll work. I can clean that up a bit. Now with the dark foam, I'm going to extend it out just a little bit past the tail, not much. Okay. Again, a loose thread wrap to get it started, and then anchor it in with 3 or 4 good wraps, tightening it up as you go. How's everyone doing? We're all doing good? Nah, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to take the orange foam next. I'm just going to cut out about 1 centimeter. This is just to help keep track of it on the water, make it easier to see. So one of the tricks, in your kit, your rubber legs should still be together. If they're not, not a big deal. If they're still together, it makes it easier to tie them in a knot. So I'm going to tie it in just a simple overhand knot. Segmented? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to tie it in a knot. Now I'm going to split it because I only want one after the knot. All right. Yeah, these are going to be the back legs. So we don't have barred legs, so I'm going to use a Sharpie. I'm just going to put in some segmentation in the legs. Okay? It's not the prettiest segmenting, but it'll work. And that was just with a Sharpie, Copic, whatever you want to use. So I'm going to plan it out approximately there. And go ahead and just anchor that in with a couple of wraps. Now, how you originally put it on there, there's a lot of different techniques. I'm just putting it in place and wrapping it on. Now, you could wrap it around your thread ahead of time. I can show you that in a minute. Now, I'm not cutting this off. I'm going to leave this on. I'm just going to bring it over onto the foam to get it out of the way. Actually, I am going to have to cut it because I got to do 2 of these. So I'm going to cut this in half and do my other leg. So I'm just going to repeat that step. Going to tie a knot in it. I'm running out of legs, so I'm going to move that knot down a little bit. So again, there's the knot. The knot you want to have in the knot in the rubber legs, you want kind of 3/4 of the way to one end, if not a little bit more. Oh, I hear some bad news over here. What's going on?
Don't pull too hard on your legs.
Ah, it's a lesson to learn. Okay, so the tensile strength on the legs is not that great. You can only stretch it so much before she snaps, so be careful. Okay, so before I get it really anchored into place, I'll show you. You can change the length of your legs by stretching it on both sides a little bit, and you can go back and forth to a certain amount to micro adjust where it is. And if your back legs are kicking out like that to each side, you're golden. Get it as best you can. This knot, if you don't get it where you exactly need it, again, you can always cut it, move it back and forth, play around with it. Doesn't have to be exact. So now we're going to fold everything back, and we're going to move our thread forward and advance it for the next section.
think so.
We're just going to do one more section, and then we'll trim it and do the head and all that stuff. So you don't want to have it too close to the eye of the hook, because again, you know, you got to leave yourself some room. So we're going to anchor in the white foam first, just because it'll make it easier to get it solid. Now, the rubber legs, we didn't cut them off because we want to bring them forward and make them our front legs. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can just straighten it out along the sides and then anchor it in. Or if you want to hide it so it's not visible, you can crisscross your legs. Right? So then you won't see your legs on the side. That's just me being picky, but it's entirely up to you. If you can see, I just crisscrossed them over on top of the white foam. It helps me get the legs sticking straight out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to anchor down the brown foam, right? How's everyone doing? Now you could finish it off right there. It'd be great. Or we could do another section like what we did to the tail. We could do a freehand section hanging off the front. You want to do that? Yeah, you actually tie it off, do your whip finish, and then we can freehand another section on there if you want. So I'm actually going to fold all the foam back, tie in the head, and do your whip finish. Now, I didn't segment the front legs. We can still do that.
Those are the kinds of things I wish someone would actually told me. Like you make mistakes and you might go wrong. Well, then you have a whole bunch of hell.
So now this is the tricky part. I'm going to freehand tie this front section, just like what we did with the back.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll lease like 5 miles or
Okay, so now I'm just going to get rid of all this extra, trim it as close to that thread as I possibly can without cutting the thread, obviously. I'm just going to go and clean that up a little bit. So now I'm going to do a couple things. We need to put head cement on all the thread because it's pretty exposed thread. So each section needs just the tiniest little bit of head cement. Your typical head cement will not corrode your foam or your legs, so you don't have to worry too much. This is a lacquer-based head cement, so it won't wreck any of this material. So the last step is we're going to put an eye on it. So it's just a Sharpie. That's all I'm going to do. But we're going to put a little dollop of UV resin on the eye afterwards just to give it some three-dimensional gloss to it.
Yeah, I should put the one in that they gave us.
You can always cut them off. Or whatever.
Now I'm just using the Solares Thin Hard and just the tiniest little bit right on the black. And there we go. Touch up the legs a little bit. A little more segmentation on them. There we go. We got the AJ's hopper.
And it doesn't need a lot of, at least 25, to get 1 day.
So as you can see that profile,
If I can get one.
you know what? Even if it looks like it's drunk or it's wounded, it'll still fish. So as long as it holds together, run with it.
When they call the broad day, it means one person.
Call you when this doesn't finish.
It makes sense if you're in
Yeah. I'm gonna let you know how that went.
Mine has one leg.
This is very wounded.
I just realized one of my legs is. I got it. Tucked in a bit better.
Yeah, I've been there. Done a lot of it.
So cute.
We got run over by combine.
Yours actually looks really good.
It doesn't. It does.
There's our flies for tonight.
Looks good from here.
To put your time in.
Once again, thanks to flyfishingbowriver.com for hosting this, and Bow River Brewing for giving us a nice place to work. Great food, great beer, and thanks again.